welcome back to the chat. That is, Colette and Matt have entered the chat. It's a weekly conversation about the single most important topic ever in the human condition, in human civilization, in this long time that we've been on Earth. There is nothing more important than video games.
Nope, not a thing.
I am here. Of course, it's in the title of the show. I'm here with my co-host. I'm Matt Silverman. If you listen, you know that, and you also know my co-host. Her name is Charlotte ? That's as I was sending my daughter away to get away from me to do this. She's like, "What do you? Is it a meeting? Is it a conference?" I was like, "No, it's the podcast." Oh, she's like, "That is it? That podcast with Charlotte?" I was like,
Aww.
"Yep, that's the one."
So thank you. Charlotte is my alternate reality persona.
Bizarro
in
Colette,
which I am
Colette
in fact a future cyborg.
Writer, author, streamer, artist, letterer. Stop doing things. Colette Bennett, how are you?
I can't. I'm great. I'm in like full like nostalgia / fangirl mode tonight because I am so excited that we have a guest that has been a very important part of the beginning of my career here with us. So my good friend Aaron Linde from Destructoid.
Hi.
Thanks
for having me.
Welcome.
Colette, woo!
Oh my God. So awesome to have you. Thank you for coming to hang out.
Oh, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I feel for Matt a little bit because every time I pull on an old game industry friend, he has to be like the third wheel because we're like, oh my God, do you remember when this thing happened and then this and this and this and like we're like just firing like private jokes and Matt's like, wow.
Oh no, I think we can figure that out. We'll just insert Matt into our memories and just talk about him as though he was there with us the whole time.
Right. Okay. Good. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Matt, you want to know what the industry was like in 2007 when we were in the very first year of Destructoid, and our founder actually wore a robot helmet made of air conditioner parts to E3.
I remember that. That was the year that Matt got arrested at E3. I remember that. Yeah.
That's right. Right. There was an incident. It was. Look, I'm not proud of it, but there was a urinal and there was a men's room and you guys know the rest.
Oh my God. Good times.
It was a different time. Let's just say that it was a different time.
One of the people I tweeted earlier, we were doing the show and I said, hey, if anyone wants to ask any questions for Aaron, who's followed Destructoid for a long time, my God, the people that still hang around my Twitter and socials and are like, oh my God, I started reading you like 18 years ago. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I don't appreciate that at all.
And those people show up in my stream sometimes too. And I'm like, why do you guys remember me and care? Like, I'm just awed by that. So no, for real though, like those people are just amazing.
Yeah. Every now and then, like somebody will ping me with something about something from the Destructoid era, and I feel compelled to apologize to them. Like when we were doing press for Battleborn, we had at Gearbox we had Tim Turry from Game Informer come out and interview us, and that was what he opened with. He's like, so I used to listen to Podtoid and used to see your stuff on Destructoid and all this other stuff, and I was just like, I was like a deer in headlights. I'm like, oh no, like I feel like I owe you some of that time back or something, or I feel like I have to explain myself. I mean, I don't know, Colette, how much have you talked about Destructoid on this here show? Like for instance, have you ever mentioned the fact that our unofficial slogan for the first, however many years of existence was? Well, let me put it this way. Our slogan was also Cox. The thing about Destructoid is this. It boils down to this. None of us are ever going to be able to run for public office. That's what it comes down to.
No, ever in life. And I mean, even if we went back and deleted every single possible internet archive, at one point, we actually had a guy who was our quote unquote PR manager, or as he called himself, PR nightmare. And I will never forget that the very first GDC that I ever went to, that he was there, and I was waiting for him in a bar with a couple of the other young, super green writers. And he was like, hey, come meet us across the street. And we literally walked into the bar to him doing a full meat swing, like pants down in the bar, like facing the bartender. And the bartender was like, I'm calling the fucking police. And I was like, I was like, this is my boss? Am I supposed to report to this guy?
You know what's crazy? I thought I knew all the horror stories. I never heard that one.
That one's a fine one. I think I was with Husky, who of course was a baby, Robert Suma, and Nero, and I don't know, like one or two other people. But yeah, it's whatever anybody ever said about it, it was worse.
Look, my takeaway here, and it's a good one, is that I finally have a name for my new band, and it's going to be called Meat Swing, and we did it.
I've now been married for a while, and I actually told my husband, like, I don't even know why, but just like a week ago, I told him that story, and he just stared at me, and he was like, how have you never told me that before now? And I was like, it's ancient history. It happened like 15 years ago. And he was like, yeah, but how do you not tell that story to everyone you know? And I'm like, well, I did. It just took me a while.
Yeah, now it just seems so blasé. Like there was that. I think it was it was the E3 where they were holding it in the hangar. Was that 2007? Where they weren't doing. It wasn't a proper E3.
2008.
Was it 2008? Okay, I remember we were in a van that Ron had rented, and driving to a bar or something, some kind of function, and on the way we spot Andy Milonakis. Do you guys know who that is?
Yes,
that sounds familiar.
The MTV personality. Just Google him. He's barrel fun. Anyway, we spot him on the corner. Ron slams on the brakes and hangs out the window and says, "Do you need a ride?" And he's like, "Sure." And he hops aboard. Like we just collected Andy Milonakis on our way to a bar. It's funny. I think back to that period of my life, like, and it's so crystallized in that weird 2007 to 2009 resin where nobody had any idea what they were doing. Yep. There was like all the blogs that just kind of started up. The very idea of being a games journalist was being redefined day after day, and we were very much hung up on the idea of being the rude punk kids in the back of the class and just doing the dumbest shit all the time.
We did.
And I can scarcely believe that it actually happened. It was the weirdest time of my life by far.
Yes, by far. Also mine. And I feel the exact same way about it. And like, sometimes when I like am in a position where I have to sum up like my career in like a couple of like, paragraphs or sentences or whatever, and I feel like the company is right, I will basically say that I was a gonzo game blogger that literally like clawed my way into journalism, like via that, via like a trash shoot.
Yeah, that's an incredible crucible to begin in, like, and to go as far as you have, and like, and to become like, I feel that way about everybody that is now like Nick Chester and Dale and Jim Sterling, who is now the Jim Sterling. Everybody, like, I'm shocked that it's very strange. Time is a weird thing. I don't recommend it to anybody.
No, I also don't recommend it to anybody. It is very strange. And like you were saying on Twitter, like, yeah, when you look back and you're like, oh my God, that was 15 years ago. Or like, especially to go and look back at like some of the stuff that you published that at the time you were like, oh my God, I'm writing about video games. This is amazing. And now I go back and look at it and I'm like, oh my God. But like we had no editors. And also we were like, just doing our own thing.
Standards.
No standards. And so it was just literally like, just go crashing into it. But, I kind of, like you said, like, I do kind of feel like, obviously, it was a great springboard for a lot of people because so many of those people that you and I work with did go on to have like esteemable careers in gaming and otherwise. So I always have thought of Destructoid as not only a wild and fun time in my life, but also like the springboard that helped launch so many people.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a career without it, and I'm forever grateful for that. Like it was, I basically my career. Well, it has been a comedy of errors the entire way, and like and lots of happenstance, chance encounter kind of stuff that kind of got me to. Before I actually started pursuing what I thought was a career, it was just a bunch of weird coincidences, but none of them would have happened without Destructoid. So I reflect on that often. That of all the springboards that one could possibly spring off of, it's a hell of a thing.
You're both alluding to it, and but I'm still curious. 2007, 2008, which is that emerging blogosphere time. But then I guess I'm wondering, I got into the biz late 2009 from a different angle, not games. And when I got in, it was still Wild Westy. It was still, hey, we're figuring stuff out and nothing's set up yet. But there was a vibe in that newsroom that is like, we are a media organization and we are editing. We have editors and we have and so I'm wondering, is it the time 2007 is 1,000 years before 2010 basically, and was there an evolution there, or was it games where it was a lot of like, yeah, we're writing about video games, can you believe it? Or is it both? What do you think?
I think it probably was simultaneously both. Like, everything about Destructoid, right, was literally like we're writing about video games. But like the founder came from, I believe, an advertising background, right? Linde didn't. I think that's how it was. And so he definitely had some business acumen to bring to it, even though he was just as much of a complete nerd as the rest of us, And so I think that actually did help, even though we were the definition of a dumpster fire for many years. I think he was able to eventually carve it into something that I believe he sold it in an acquisition a few years ago for multi-million-dollar deal.
Right. But was there a culture?
As crazy as it was,
there a culture unique to that? Because I guess then what I'm now thinking of, now that you said this, is what was IGN and the Kotakus of the world doing at the time when Destructoid was yeah, we're the cool kids? What was going on there?
I would like to hear Aaron's take, but I'll give a brief one of mine. Because I actually freelanced for Kotaku first. That was actually my very first writing games job, right? Yep. Very, very first. And so I had done Kotaku, and I was looking around at a couple of other places to start freelancing, and then I was approached directly by Destructoid, who were like, we want you here. And I was like, oh, okay. And of course that would have been exciting if there had been a big paycheck and out, connected to it. But I was a starry-eyed child. So I was like, okay.
Sounds great. Can I be paid in exposure? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Free games.
But my impression, okay, so at the time there were the big three, and it was Joystick was one, Kotaku was one, and then Destructoid quickly found a way into that third spot. I don't know why IGN was never thought of. I think because IGN was thought less of as a blog and more of as a news outlet.
Well, yeah, whereas, they were already legit. They were in my head, they were always a part of that. I always compartmentalize them in the same place that I would put One Up and even beyond sites, just actual gaming magazines. They'd been doing it for so long. They were legit for so long. The blog thing and that kind of style, I feel that was the emergent property, right? That was the.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so maybe that was a part of it. But if you had to take the three of us and put us side to side, it was I think both Kotaku and Joystick were trying to take more of a national news, breaking news kind of approach to what they were doing. So they wanted good journalism, they wanted this, they wanted that, and then you just had us motherfuckers.
Perhaps it was the birth of enthusiast journalism, for lack of a better term, which I classify and think about now. I didn't invent the term. It's hey, that YouTuber who has 4 million views on every episode is not a trained journalist working for a media org, but everyone really cares what he or she has to say about the next game. So that is still journalism, And so maybe that was, and in the blogosphere too, that was the vibe. Even on my side of the pond there, where it was yeah, we're commentating and we're kind of cribbing quotes and attributions from other places. We're not doing a ton of original reporting, but people really seem to care about the takes of our writers, and that was the beginning of that time, that emergence.
Yeah,
that influence.
I think what set Destructoid apart. And by the way, when we say third, I think that's a distant third, but yeah, third. But I think what set Destructoid apart was that the whole MO of that site was community cultivation. Like that was that was job one, and so there were, we were basically cultivating cults of personality around, like that's Birch, Sterling, all those folks that were super good at that. They found their audiences there, and that's where Hey Ash kicked off initially. Like that's it was, and in that respect, I think we were very successful and we were very good. But I wouldn't accuse any of us from that era of being journalists. Like we weren't.
Oh, absolutely not.
I don't think we ever broke news, did we? Like, did we?
No, I don't think so. I feel like it was more about like just talking about the culture of games, and there was
it was the commentary side of it.
Yeah, and also like opinion, which like I feel like that has gotten bigger over time. But I felt like because we had the kind of site we had, like people's opinions and ideas. Like if you had an idea like, oh, I really want to do this series, like, Chad doing the memory card, for instance, like stuff like that, like was really championed and held up. And I'm not going to say that
memory card.
I do too. But like, I think that, one of the nice parts of it is because it was so messy and unorganized, we were allowed to do things like that. And I do think it's why like the voices mattered so much.
Yeah, but the internet.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the internet of today is made in that image because media companies, blogs that became media companies tried to be the New York Times and CNNs and what they tried to be that for the internet. But the people who have won, it's not that it is a race to be won, but I'm like influencers and their communities are where it's at in terms of durable business models of 2021, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
As someone who cares deeply about this stuff and aspires to both make the content and enjoys being part of other people's communities, I don't know who any particular writer is, like a journalist, a journalist writer for any publication. I might be aware of certain names or beats, but like you better believe I am subscribed to Personality ABC, buying the merch, supporting on Patreon, in the Discord. Like that is, so for you guys to have been pioneering that model around something that fans are very passionate about, fandom around games, but around could have been anything, is the model we see today. And I'm just interested, I'm fascinated to see that journey, because I don't know what is Destructoid today. Is it a news feed of information? Like I don't know that there are many personality driven enterprises happening there now, but I could be incorrect on that. Of course,
they hire actual journalists now.
Oh, do they really? Wow!
I saw. They hired a senior reporter who actually had I'm failing in this entirely because I can't remember any of the specifics, but I do remember, this maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, stopping in my tracks and thinking, "Wow, that guy's legit!" Like being really impressed. So
right.
So they've definitely leveled up a lot over the years.
That's crazy,
and that's not a bad thing. I don't mean to diss that at all.
But I think your observation is absolutely accurate. That the spirit and the DNA that was kind of in our time has now been disseminated into YouTube and Twitch. Like that's where that lives now. And we just predated the rise of YouTube in that degree. Like YouTube existed when we were around, but it didn't have the I don't even know how you describe it. Like the that very creator oriented kind of attitude towards it. Like that was soon to come, and it arrived.
It was a dumpster for viral novelty content.
Yeah,
the quote unquote cat videos, and to YouTube /Google, when they bought its credit, they said, no, this could be more, and this could be loyalty content, not just novelty content. And that shift is monumental when you look at what YouTube is today. And I have to share something that I think you'll both find really interesting. On another show that I produce, we interviewed the current owner, the proprietor of Something Awful, which is meme forum.
I am still a Something Awful user.
Okay, so
nice.
I still browse that forum daily. It's me and my fellow olds, man. 2004 Reg Day. What up? Sorry.
There you go. And there is a membership fee that you like a one-time lifetime membership fee, which I found extraordinary, because it's like when everything is open to everyone, it gets shitty real fast. But if you just charge $5, then people who care are going to be there, and people who don't care are going to pass it by. So I find that very compelling. But what this, I regret, I don't remember the gentleman's name. He acquired it from the original founder. He was a longtime admin or mod of the site. And he said that Let's Plays, before there was a place to put video on the internet, people on Something Awful would create Let's Plays by screenshotting Ocarina of Time. And it's like, okay, at this fence, make a right, screenshot, post to the forum. Now here, go left, here, screenshot, post to the forum. And that was where Let's Play culture came from fucking web forums before YouTube even existed.
Yeah,
and my brain blew apart when I learned that, because that is so cool.
Yeah, and not only that, you can also trace a direct line from 4chan to Something Awful, and by extension QAnon. So I actually feel a palpable sense of guilt for my participation. Seriously, I do. I think about that frequently. Like so much of what's awful about the world. Oh my God, didn't mean that. But so much of what sucks about the world, internet wise, has roots in SA. It's crazy because it was so prolific back then, and it was so it certainly was ahead of its time in a lot of ways. But my God, like I don't think go back to the years that we're talking about, 2004 to 2009 ish, around there, and like if you were to head back with just a picture of what the world looks like today, everyone would just be like, "You're full of shit." That's
no,
stupid.
exactly.
There's no possible way. Like things are silly now, but come on, we're just all making jokes and being ironically racist on the internet. How bad could that possibly be?
Oh my God.
Ugh.
This is great. This is so good.
We could geek out about, early 21st century media for 1,000 years, but unless there is more reminiscing to do, I'm eager to hear from Aaron about the leap from games media and internet denizenry to game studios, narrative writing for a little something that we here on this show like to call video games.
that little known pastime,
it's niche.
All right, well, I'll just so the very short version of the story is I lucked out because I was a shitty journalist. That was basically the way it worked out. Like I liked writing. I liked writing features and doing interviews and that kind of stuff. There came a day where I lost my taste for reviews because I didn't like the fact that we had to put scores on stuff. And at this time, I had jumped from Destructoid to an outlet called Shack News. I think this was 2008, and had done that for a little under a year. And unlike Destructoid, which was in our time not a rigorous journalistic enterprise, Shack News actually did news, and they would follow up on stuff and get comments, and you'd have to be good at that stuff. And I could ape it, but I was not a natural, and I could kind of feel like I could feel that there was there's some kind of probably firing in my future, just because it was, I could do my job, but not without a significant amount of handholding. It just, for actual, that's why I especially today, I have insane respect for what Patrick Klepek does, and the Ubisoft stories that were just published, like serious hard hitting shit. They do great. I was not that. And as I started getting that sense that this is probably not going to be a long-term thing for me. I had just graduated college, and was kind of poking around looking for. I was like, what do I do with an English degree? I got an English degree because I had no other ideas what to do with my life. And and a friend of ours, a mutual friend of mine and Colette's, a wonderful, breathtakingly wonderful human being by the name of Chris Furness. Who, yeah, I know. Oh, what a sweetheart. Yeah. And he's got 2 kids now, and they're the most beautiful kids you've ever seen.
They're so beautiful.
He is such a dad. It's obscene. Like he's the proest dad you've ever met in your life. I'd been asking around randomly, like, hey, you know of anything that could possibly use a guy who could write stuff? Because that's the one thing I know how to do. I have no idea how that translates into a job, because I knew of stuff like working in editing and publishing houses and that kind of thing. But I didn't see myself as, first of all, I didn't have the experience, to get into that kind of thing. And second, I just didn't see myself there. So I was just like, whatever. And Chris at the time was working at Microsoft Game Studios on the Gears of War 2 team as a UX UI designer. And he was like, we do actually have a need for that. We're looking for a contract web content writer position, which that is the single luckiest moment of my life, because it virtually was the same shit that I was doing. Like it was, I write blog posts but I'm just doing it for Gears of War as opposed to, for Shack News or for Destructoid. Interviewed, landed the job somehow, and did so I was a web content writer. This was actually fun wrinkle to the career trajectory was 3 or 4 months after I got that job, the financial crisis hit. And it was so much fun, Colette. Oh my god, it was so good. So Microsoft had its first wave of layoffs ever following that. They laid off the entire Microsoft Game Studios web team. But they kept the contractors on so we could sunset our own jobs, because they were still, at least for the Gears team, Microsoft was contractually bound to continue operation of the Gears of War 2 website, because it had a game to web feature in it. It had photo mode well before, which is kind of crazy actually to think about now. Like now that every game now has a photo mode and every platform has the ability to like upload screenshots and that kind of thing. The Gears of War 2 had a photo mode. You could upload them to the website, which was kind of cool. But that had to be maintained. So they kept me aboard to maintain the website. But the way Microsoft did contracts at this time was like you could work for them for a year, and then you had to take a 90-day furlough before you could work for them again. I did that 3 times.
I remember this so well.
Oh, it sucked
both
so
you
much.
and Chris had to do it, and I remember.
Yeah, it was the worst. Yeah, because it's like during the financial crisis, I had a year of employment and then 90 days of unemployment, which was terrifying every time it happened, every single time. I'm still not over it. I'm still
but you could, and this is easier said than done, but you could get other work in that time, but that's very hard to do.
Oh, for sure.
That right?
And therein lies the problem, right? Because even with the experience that I had, because I mean, there were. After that first year, I was basically qualified to do like community management. That was kind of where my trajectory was generally heading. Couldn't get a bite anywhere because, I only had a year experience of writing blog posts for Gears 2. So like, meanwhile, I was applying for like marketing writer at Comcast and, like all this other just nonsense and not getting a call back anywhere. It was terrifying.
Wow.
90 days comes up. They bring me back on as a producer this time because they need somebody to build another website for Gears 3. So I worked with another producer. We did that. Meanwhile, I kept writing all the blog posts and stuff. And it was during that time that I started thinking to myself, I'm adjacent to so much creativity here. Maybe I can make something happen. So I started begging people, for work that they didn't want to do. And Eric Nyland, who was the writing lead on the publishing side for Gears 3. Karen Travis wrote Gears 3, but he was kind of like he was the writing lead on the publishing side, did some support stuff. He was going to do the lore, didn't want to do the lore because he was also working on Halo. So he gave the lore to me, and that was my first in-game writing credit.
Wow.
Was all the lore for Gears of War 3. And that was awesome. Oh my God. Like I will remember bringing that game home and, because for me, games have been my entire life. Like there's never been a time when I've not been obsessed with games, and the dream of writing stuff for a video game had been my dream since I was old enough to realize that people actually wrote video games. They didn't just spring fully formed from some kind of ether. That there were people that wrote shit, and that shit got put into the game. And I never, but but those jobs, especially back then, writing postings never happened. The one job that I knew of for a full-time game writer that I had seen before was the localization writer-editor positions at Nintendo, where you would work in the treehouse and work with a translator, and you would write the English copy for Nintendo games. But generally at that time, game writing was a game design, activity. That was usually because come on, anybody can write, right? Anybody, it's easy. And so and that's how you get all the wonderful stories that you saw in the early to mid to late 90s to early aughts to mid aughts, like the stories that are kind of just sort of there, it's there wasn't a specialized discipline, but right. Then you start seeing games like Portal and BioShock and that kind of thing, and then this appetite starts to grow, right? And you start seeing more of these positions, but I had no idea how to get into any of those. I had that same problem that everybody has, where you have just enough experience that they don't laugh you out of the room, but not enough experience to get the gig, right? So. Mm-hmm. So I came back for one more contract as a narrative designer, this time actually in the narrative department, and was script supervisor for Gears 3. So in addition to finishing up the work that I had started doing, I also did like all the VO reconciliation for it. So like, just a bunch of just really thankless work. And if you get into games, for the love of God, high five and hug your localization team as often as possible, because it is the most thankless, grueling task. I think next to test, it's the most thankless and grueling task of game development.
Yeah, I know jack shit about it, and then I look at a AAA game with 10,000 lines of dialogue, and then I look at the menu, the options screen, and it's like, this is also in Portuguese and Chinese, and I'm like, how the fuck does this
and then you wrap your head around the fact that like somebody has to schedule all those actors, they have to coordinate all the content, they have to deal with changes. Like that's the number one thing about game development is nothing is permanent. Everything will change, and what you end up with will look nothing like what you intended when you started out, because that's just the nature of game development. And localization is they're the caboose on that train, and they have to account for every single change. And oh my god! So anyway, I worked with them to finish Gears 3. We shipped Gears 3, brought it home. Greatest day of my life, and then I was like, well, now I can't do anything else, because I've seen my name in some credits, and I saw some stuff in a game that I wrote. I'm hooked. I got to keep doing this. That was my last contract with Microsoft. I bounced around from with a couple of other freelance gigs until landing a job at Airtight Games on Kim Swift's team, who she had come to Airtight Games after doing Portal at Valve, and she had a small team that was working on a game called Quantum Conundrum. They were going to do a sequel. I came on board there to write the sequel, and a month after that game was canceled, because here's the other fun thing about my career. This was also the rise of mobile games. So everyone was skeptical about investment in big console titles. Everyone was thinking, well, the future of phones and that kind of stuff. Why would anybody want to play this thing? And so there's all of this ebb and flow that all of which impacted my career prospects. But we ended up spending, I was there for another year and a half. We pitched a bunch to try to keep our team afloat. Eventually landed a project on Ouya, of all things, and got enough money to keep the lights on for a little while. And about that time, that's when I was able to start actually landing jobs. That's when I signed on with Gearbox to go do Battleborn, and then after that, I did that in Texas, which was a terrible idea. Fled Texas because I'm a pasty white, pasty, sweaty, not great in heat, instantly burst into flames kind of guy. Fled Texas back to Washington State. Got on at ArenaNet, was there for a few years. Got on at Bungie, was there for 6 months, and that's what led me to 343. And that's where I've been for the last 2 years and change now. So yeah, it's so my advice to anybody who wants to get into anybody who wants to make that transition, be be lucky. I guess that's I would like to I would like to say that I had even the slightest bit of influence on making my career happen, but I knew lovely people who were very generous, and I was very lucky, and that's pretty much what it comes down to.
But then when the luck happens, you seize the reins of that opportunity, and that's
opportunity
what that is.
Meets preparation, all that stuff. That's true. But man, I was lucky, you know.
And,
so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Many additional questions, but briefly, the tail end of there, you mentioned 343, but you are working on something of note right now, are you not?
I'm on Halo Infinite, shipping this fall. I'm very excited about it.
Never heard of it.
I know,
sounds
right?
interesting. Sounds interesting.
What's that?
I'll tell you, it's whenever I have cause to think about my career in a nutshell, and I think about how I started, and that now I'm writing on Halo, it never fails to blow my mind. Like every bit of marketing material that we've released for Halo Infinite, every beat that we've had, anytime we've had opportunity for people to like react to stuff, I'm just like, this is the fucking craziest thing. It's madness. Like how did I deceive such a long line of people into letting me do this?
I feel that way about my entire career, so I completely relate.
Oh,
to
I
that.
know. And that imposter syndrome like never goes away. I've learned to ignore it. I learned to ignore it, but like now I've got it cordoned off in that nice little part of my soul where it's just like, haha, yeah. I mean, it is absurd, but I don't really have time to think about that, so I'll just put that over here. You know?
Yeah,
that's where it should be. Keep it there. Yeah.
Yep.
I have immediate questions about the process specifically, and I think we have discussed this on this show, Colette, and in various contexts. But I have said and thought, when you write a novel, when you write a movie, a linear story, that is hard and is complex, especially if it's good. But it has a beginning, it has a middle and an end, and it has a trajectory and a through line, and every word and character has its purpose, et cetera, et cetera. But a game, especially one as rich and complex as a AAA narrative game, like some that you've worked on, I envision it as a spider web. And you hit on this earlier when you were saying about, when things change, well, if one strand of the spider web changes, that strand is connected to 400 other strands that are now affected by one line of dialogue changing, or I'm very fascinated by lore.
Cut. Yeah,
right, exactly. Lore and world building. I know it's complicated. In a nutshell, how does it work? Is there's a brand Bible or a show Bible when you're running a show that's like, here's everything that has ever happened and that might also happen in the universe of the show. Here you go, writers. Like, does it work like that in games too? How do you approach it?
Oh, it absolutely does. It really does depend. This is a cop-out answer, but it depends on the project, right? And I've been fortunate that I've had both experiences. Where, like, to give you an example, I've two games that I've worked on. I worked on Destiny 2 Shadowkeep, and I worked on Battleborn at Gearbox. And Battleborn was a new IP. And the interesting thing about Battleborn was that Battleborn rose out of the ashes of a canceled project called Brothers in Arms Furious 4. And so it had a lot of tech debt and a lot of investment made that we kind of had to make the most of. So, like, my experience making Battleborn was, it's kind of like if somebody said, "Hey, write a novel," but then they just dump out a big box of like scraps of paper and say, like, and it has to include all of these. Here are the constraints. Like that here's what you get to work with and within. Make the best story you possibly can out of that. And what was really interesting about Battleborn, you want to talk about changes. And I think I don't think I'm going to make anybody mad at Gearbox for saying this, because I'm pretty sure I've said it publicly before. Battleborn Battleborn shipped with a single player component. By the way, if you want to play Battleborn, you can't, because the servers are offline.
I heard that.
Oh man, one of the worst days of my life was when that game went offline, because it's like, 3 years of your life just evaporating.
Yeah, there's a larger discussion about game preservation and such, because it's an art that you create. Like the idea of YouTube going offline and the work that I have done going away, it doesn't even occur to me. Like it's weird to even think of it. It's weird to think of internet content disappearing forever. And that's a larger discussion.
Yeah.
But
well, and apparently
continue.
that's like already happening. Like, I forget what the term is, but they talk about like internet rot, basically, where stuff that people assume is available is just like going offline, and there's and all kinds of knowledge is being lost forever. It's really strange. Like, and those are questions we haven't really grappled with yet, because we're only just beginning to lose things, and it's only going to get worse. But with Battleborn had a single-player component. We shipped with a single-player component. It did not begin that way. In the beginning, it was a multiplayer online shooter. So the story that we were constructing was a story that was going to be told through characters. And the characters were created in this very, like, in a very Wild West kind of atmosphere, where it was like, because I mean the narrative thrust of the game is it's a bunch of basically the God damn it, I can't even like summarize it. It's just the short version of the game is there is one star burning in the universe before all of the universe succumbs to heat death and infinite darkness. And every sentient being left in the universe is gutterballed to this star, and they're all fighting for control over it. That's a super brief version of it. There's all kinds of wacky sci-fi conceit around it, but that's the general idea. And so we had all of this really insanely vibrant and diverse cast of characters, and it was incumbent upon me to find a way to tell a story that kind of like that I could express through multiplayer chatter and through relationships, but that wasn't going to be expressed through a typical campaign. And then suddenly we had a typical campaign, but we didn't get additional time or money to do it. So it's very much, and it had to build on what we had already. There were things that I could change, but we had to construct something, and quickly, with those pieces that we had, in a way that we didn't anticipate. And so so where you end up is, I think anybody in game development, like after a couple of projects, you begin to realize, like, I've noticed that after people ship a couple of projects, they stop talking shit about games that fail in one way or another, because those failures become instantly you instantly gain an appreciation for it. You can imagine a number of ways in which something, because nobody wants to ship a game that's flawed. Nobody wants to ship a bad game, but sometimes flawed games ship and sometimes bad games ship, and you can see how that could happen. But meanwhile, so the story that we ended up there was just kind of what can we cobble together? What could we build with what we have? What satisfying story can we tell with these pieces? Then you go to a place like Destiny, where there isn't just something that came before. There is like hundreds of thousands of words of content of stuff that came before. Guild Wars was the same deal. Those are incredibly intimidating projects to wade into. You can do as much research as you want, but the task there is, getting religious about the content, understanding, understanding what's come before, and how can you express something new in that sphere that moves the story forward and feels like, because there's a sense of, I had this sense a lot on Destiny, especially. I had this ever-present sense that I was writing fan fiction, but I was writing canon. But I was a fan. I love Destiny.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Except if you're in the club, then fan fiction becomes canonical fiction. Like,
exactly,
that's what it is.
It was impossible for me to shake that sensation, and it's a really strange sensation. And
so, is there a lore master? Like, those people who are just like, I know everything about Star Wars that could ever be, and so there has to be someone like that on the team, being like, Aaron, love the story, it's coming along great, but this whole section can't happen because this planet doesn't exist anymore. You idiot.
And depending on the scale of the IP that you're working with, I mean, those positions already in a lot of places already exist, and they're becoming more common. Bungie actually is hiring I think it's still listed on their career page, what they describe as a Destiny historian, which is somebody that can be the voice of authority in what's come before, and because I like to consider myself pretty well versed in the games that I've worked on, but I mean, I could study. Well, here's what it is. I'm a shitty student, and I could study for for years and years. Right. But there is a kind of person that is, and I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of these people that are very for their favorite franchise. We have one of the guys on the Halo team is this wonderful gentleman named Jeff Easterling. He's one of the franchise writers. He is that guy. He knows everything because he worships this content. He lives, breathes, and it is his world. And he is an invaluable resource because there's just so much of it.
Dream job of that's the kind of person who would be the editor on Wikipedia on the fandom page, making sure that stuff's in line. But instead of doing that in his spare time, he is employed by the company to make sure the trains are on the tracks, and that's amazing. And
the bigger an IP is, the more likely it is they have somebody like that on staff. It's a vital role, absolutely vital.
But isn't it also basically, and forgive the use of this word, but isn't it basically professional otaku? Isn't that basically what a person who is the guy on the internet that would be oh, and you're wrong about this because there's this thing that happened here and here. That guy now has a formal professional job title.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, if you're trying to stay within, or if you're trying to maintain some degree of canonical consistency, it's you do eventually have to listen to those people because they know that the spread of content better than you ever could, even if you yourself made it. It's incredible.
I think it's amazing. I mean, I just really hope that at some point someone could be if we could just have a K-pop expert that we could pay just because this much because you're just nerdy and hyper focused on it. I would be that's
that
great.
Would be so cool.
When can I start?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing.
So
I do like I would love to meet the candidates for that Destiny historian role, because I bet they're I bet they're the most diehard. I bet the people that they have coming in are the most diehard fans, and the most thoroughly educated fans you could possibly have. And I find that level of exactly like you said, Colette, that level of knowledge of K-pop, I find fascinating. No matter what the domain is, because that's that's just I love experts. I adore experts.
Right. But the creativity also is really so mind blowing to me, and this is very related but tangential here. I happen to be listening to the audiobook of the Silmarillion, which is Tolkien's Legendarium.
Oh man, yes.
And so you're talking about a series of games that was made by a team, and there's 6 in the franchise, and there's books, and there's media, and there's blog posts, and there's lots of people, and then there are historians who are making sure this is all collected. But Tolkien was one fucking guy who didn't just create thousands of years of lore and religion and whatever. He created languages for the characters to speak, and those languages had to be linguistically sound. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a historian of Tolkien, but I don't think he had anyone do he had an editor for his books, but there was nobody.
But the raw creativity and organization of of all of that was all him. Yeah.
And
absolutely.
He didn't have Google Docs either. The dude was just in the 1920s or whatever, writing things down. I can't even get my brain. George R.R. Martin, similarly, is just a dude on a computer making Game of Thrones. How?
I wish I could offer you some insight there, but I honestly don't know. That is, I have incredible respect for people that can pull off that degree of. people who can pull off that degree of sprawling, just absolutely sprawling world building, I think that oftentimes you'll find, and like I've worked with a ton of writers who are extremely talented in that direction. I've worked with writers that are more focused on, like, I consider myself more of a writer narrative designer, in that I'm very much into the manner of the storytelling and the relationships between gameplay and storytelling, and I love writing dialogue, but I love it most when I'm doing something that that has deep hooks into the actual experience, the experiential side of game narrative. But I've worked with writers that, on day one, when they land on a project and they immediately, I was working on a new IP some years ago, and we had a writer that joined on that immediately set to work basically creating the Silmarillion for this thing. And we had to tell him, like, whoa, okay, hang on. All of this is super
too much.
Yeah. All of this is like very, very useful, but you have to keep in mind that we need to, there has to be some degree of focus. But all of that work is absolutely, like, it's absolutely useful. It's just like it's way easier for all of that to be meaningful in the context of a novel than it is a game, because in a game you're limited, in terms of what you can what you can surface. You're limited in terms of what you can represent. But every game that's out there has a Google Doc or a story Bible that's a phone book thick, 5% of which you're actually going to see in the game.
Yep.
But those writers are incredible. Like, I think I'm mature enough to admit that I am just not that creative. I am not so creative that I'm not a guy that thinks to myself, like, what language do these people speak? I will
Right.
I will never go that far. I mean, there are fine details that I can appreciate, but they're almost always like meant to support a single character as opposed to a world.
Right.
I think
Right.
some writers come at it like, I want to build a world. I want to imagine, like, what are the, what is an average day-to-day existence in this world for somebody that we're not even going to focus on in the story. Like, and what does that imply about the mechanics that drive this society and this civilization, and how does that relate to X, Y, and Z? And they can just start and never stop. Those people are incredible. They are cyborgs from the future.
Yeah, but they are manufacturing the raw materials,
yes,
which you then use to create the story of a protagonist for the player, for example. Yes. I assume. Yeah. This is
that's pretty much it.
This is cool stuff. I mean, I could talk about this forever. Colette, any additional questions for Aaron before we get into the topics of the day here?
Actually, you covered a lot of the things that I wanted to ask about, because I myself have thought, like, I wonder if it'd be ever possible to go from, like, a news background to a writing for games background. And I've made some, like, I've investigated and I've, like, made some inquiries, and I've never, like, found that, like, crack in the wall that would let me in. But hearing your story is actually it's very inspiring and gives me a lot of hope. So thank you for sharing it. I really enjoyed hearing it.
I promise. If nothing else, I promise you this: if I can do it, anybody can. I know several people that have come from journalistic backgrounds that work in game writing now. I mean, like, for anybody who's listening that wants some earnest advice. And call it this for you as well. Like, it's just dialogue writing. Like, if you can write a screenplay and make voices sound real and create a compelling experience with nothing but dialogue, that's like 80% of the work. Is that's 80% of what any kind of cinematic storytelling is just people talking to one another. The better that you are at that, the better of a chance you have. So work on that. If you want to get into game writing, start making screenplays, start writing spec scripts for shows that you love. Just get familiar with that, and you'll get there.
Yeah.
Hypothetical. This is probably very granular and nerdy, but again, writing dialogue is one thing, but where does it go? Meaning, it can't, for a game, it can't just live on a page that starts at the top of page and ends at bottom of page. It needs to go into a a flow chart or something. And I'm sure there is software that is used in the industry, but I guess I'm saying like if player chooses choice B, then go to this thing, and then this thing has 7 branches. And again, I'm not just saying, you know, dialogue wheel things, because that is a very simplistic view. I'm saying it's Breath of the Wild time, and fuck the quest, I'm going to this mountain. And you have to then make sure the characters on the mountain are saying the right things at the right time, because you didn't do 4 other things that the game probably wanted you to do.
Yeah, that is exactly that's the task, I think, in any interactive experience, is that you write around player agency. You work your you work to a point of understanding of like what is the most likely path for the player to or what is the prescribed path for the player to take. But if there is if that degree of freedom is allowed, then how do you account for that? What are the ways in which all of those systems intersect and interact and react to one another? And there is a reason that there's a reason that Bethesda employs as many writers and quest designers as they do, because that is a Herculean undertaking.
When the world, when I do whatever I want in a game and the world still makes sense, I sit back and I say,
it's miraculous.
How? It is a miracle. Yeah. It is beyond my understanding. Like, I understand that it is human beings connecting all the dots, but that is a type of media that I cannot fully get my brain around. So it's very nice to hear you chat about it and explain it a bit.
Well, it's nice to chat about it with you guys.
All right. This is not a breaking news show, okay? This is just like hanging out, geeking out about stuff. But we have to talk about a little something that I like to call the Steam Deck. Everyone's a buzz, guys. Okay?
I mean, look.
Q1 2022, Steam Deck. Are you getting one?
I pre-ordered one, but I just want to quickly insert myself in the conversation as the PC noob gamer, because I had a PC 20 years ago or whatever, but I mean, you weren't worried about, stuff like your CPU and your clock speed and shit like that when I was first, on a computer. And I never really gamed beyond I played stuff like Loom and like the Blade Runner, RPG. And I played stuff that was not heavily graphics dependent. Right. Mm-hmm, so then I move away eventually when I'm in my blogger years, because I want a lighter, thinner laptop. And I end up, eventually going to Apple. And I was there for a really long time. And it was only at the beginning of this year that my husband was like, you know what? I want you to be able to stream, we're getting a heavy duty, kick your ass PC. And so now we have one, and I've been using a PC now for not even a year, And so when I saw this, I was so excited because of multiple reasons. One of them being that I feel like I'm just after this, however long it's been, 6 or 7 months, starting to be okay, I get this. I get why this is so vastly different. I get the reason why people are I want to play it on my PC because it looks like dog shit everywhere else and runs like dog shit everywhere else. But also just the level of variety of games I have access to now is, and the nicheness of those games, the indie games that I can play because I have a Windows machine, that for me is the big thing, right? But I think that the one thing I don't like is that I sit at my desk all day for work because I have a job where I work on the web, and then the end of the day comes and I don't want to sit at my desk for another 2 or 3 hours playing the game, but I really want to play a game. So the Steam Deck solves that for me, in that those days where I'm okay, I don't know if I want to buy Monster Hunter Stories 2 on the Switch, or if I want to buy it for Steam. I know it's going to look better on Steam, but I just want to sit on my fucking couch, and I feel this is going to make me not have to have that problem anymore. So that that's kind of where I'm coming from around it, but I am a little worried that it's going to catch on fire. maybe in my hands, and my hands might burn off and then I'll never play a game again. So I have some concerns about that part of it.
Everything you just said is exactly what I am eager to talk about because the reason I am mostly a PC gamer, as you know, and I also do not want to sit at my desk ever again when the day is done. So my solution is I stream. I take advantage of the great PC that I have invested in, that I love, and I stream it out to the TV using a variety of technologies. And that is the happy place where I can enjoy the fidelity of PC games on a couch, on a nice television.
Right.
And so I look at the Steam Deck and I say, yes, this is awesome. This is solving a lot of things for a lot of people. I totally, as a Switch owner, I love everything about this. And I totally do not need it because I have a Switch and I have a great PC. And so I put in the $5 for the reserve your place in line for the pre-order. But we'll see, because and this is Bridget going into the next kind of question for you both is if we already have a great PC, why would I play PC games on a crappier handheld PC? And the answer to that is, if you really love handheld, if you really love laying down on the couch and playing like that, then yeah, I get it. But if I'm already on the couch, I can already use the TV. So it's a weird thing that I really love and want, and probably won't get, even though it's exactly what I am looking for. It's very I'm having a very strange consumer reaction to this awesome thing.
Yeah, I can get that, though. I mean, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to say I'm a newer PC gamer with, a long gaming history, but very little of it spent on PC, most of it spent on console. And for me, this would solve a couple of problems. One of them being that I don't have the setup that you have right now, but also that my husband and I really want to play 2-player co-op games together on the computer. And we really don't want to have to go drag a kitchen chair in here to sit in front of the desk and do it that way. We really want to sit on the sofa like civilized human beings, So this would allow one of us to hold the Steam Deck or, set it up and dock it and play on the television, using the television as the monitor, and the other person to, be in the office and use the PC in here. So for me, it's perfect, right? But I think it's very dependent on the person and their particular needs as a gamer.
Yeah, for instance, I pre-ordered it because I want to be able to play Rimworld in the bathtub. So
yes. If this is just a $500 Rimworld machine, then that is money well spent, my friend.
Yep. Now,
talk about narrative. Talk about this is another topic, but you work in narrative development, and Rimworld is the definition of emergent narrative created by, algorithms and simulation, rather, not by human. So I love that you love Rimworld as a narrative designer. I'll say that.
I'm pretty sure every because that's the brass ring, right? I think that all that anybody is working towards, if those game developers that are working towards a really robust implementation of a procedurally driven narrative are basically trying to make Rimworld with VO. That's, I think, the goal.
Yes.
Can you make 3D Rimworld as a 3D VO experience, and can you make it compelling enough that
there's nothing stop that it's going to happen. There's Rimworld is the DNA. That's the simulation is already built. Yeah. And vocal synthetic voices are very good.
I'm thinking that we're going to see something like that with that synthetic voice technology probably within the next 4 or 5 years.
Easily.
It's right around the corner.
Yes. Please continue, because I have a question for you about the Rimworld setup that you are about to describe. So please proceed.
Oh, with the bathtub setup? Is that?
Yeah, I mean the technological implications of playing Rimworld on a handheld device.
Yeah,
I have
exactly.
thoughts
right.
on
Yeah.
that.
Well, so I've been a PC gamer. I've been a PC gamer my entire life. part of the reason that I am the person that I am is because we built PCs when I was like, 8 and 9 years old. Like I built every PC that I've ever operated, and
Wow.
and I love PC gaming, and I have a similar similar setup to you, Matt, where it's like I have the capacity to play it, to play PC games, in my living room, on my couch, on my OLED TV, and it rules and it's great. But it's just like, this is how I'm old and lazy now, and this is how old and lazy I've become. That like just the opportunity to have like, and I'll continue playing on my PC. Because I'm the dork that I just recently bought a Samsung G9. Are you guys familiar with that? It's the 32:9 monitor. It's 49 inches, and it's like two 1080p monitors right next to each other with no bezel.
Yeah, ultra wide, right? Is that?
Yeah, it's super ultra wide, and it's my favorite thing in the world. Like playing Doom on that thing is one of the most immersive. It's one of the most immersive experiences I've ever had. But that being said, there are a ton of experiences that I would love to play on the go or very casually on the couch. Like I've tried to play Crusader Kings and Civ and Rimworld on my TV, because I've got one of those lap boards. Like I can make mouse-based games work, but
right.
But the idea of just being able to sprawl out on my couch and like fire up Rimworld on a device in my hands, like that is worth $500 to me.
Yes.
That's how lazy I am, and how much I hate sitting at my computer when I'm off work.
100%. So let me ask you this, and with the caveat that I've never tried it, but every time I think about going back to Rimworld, I'm like, I need to try this, which is on any tablet, Android or iOS or whatever, you fire up Steam Link, which is not the greatest streaming software available right now, but has a secret weapon, which is really, really good touch controls that simulate keyboard and mouse, like shockingly well. And I've tried it with a handful of mouse and keyboard type games with great success, but I have not tried it with a game as granular and menu-y as Rimworld. And so my point being, you might be able to play Rimworld in the bathtub tonight for free. Don't spend the $500. What do you think about that?
No, you may very well be right. I actually, because of the way that I've traditionally done my PC gaming setup, I've never done, I own a Steam Link and I've never used it. Like I had it hooked up on a TV in my bedroom. That I was just like, every time I would start something up, I'd just be like, nah, and I'd just go back over to my PC or my couch or whatever. But yeah, no, that may very well be true. But on the other hand, I have a very difficult to shake gadget lust, and I have disposable income. So
right.
But also, there is something about like, I will never give up buttons. Like buttons and tactile interfaces. I think even in a menu-based, even if I was playing something like Prison Architect, I think I still would like to have that. Yeah.
Yep. I get that. And then the other onus that I think about is more on developers. And Rimworld is made by one person, as far as I understand, maybe a small team at this point. But I never thought I would play Civilization with a controller, but the Switch version of Civ 6 is pretty good and does what you're saying of like, it's one of those games that I don't want to stream it and I don't want to sit with a mouse and keyboard on my TV. I just want to like lay in bed and play Civilization, and you can. And so I sure do wish that Rimworld implemented controller support, but for a game like that, it really would require a whole like UI overhaul, and that's a feat. So I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, but same with something like Crusader Kings 3, right? It's the same deal where some games are just are so indelibly built around a mouse and keyboard interface that there's no getting around it.
Yeah.
Or not without a significant investment of dev resources.
Not without, Civ was one of those games, and they did it. So
they did it.
It can be done.
Yeah. And there are plenty of other games. Disco Elysium is coming out on Switch soon.
Right,
God, I love it so much.
That game is so good.
So good.
Ugh. That's the kind of game
one.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, I think I'm waiting for the Switch version, assuming it runs well on Switch, because that feels like a game that's good on the couch. You know what I mean? Like laying on the couch.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
So, you know, and then the other thing that I am encouraged by with the Steam Deck is it's got good power under the hood. It's a good looking spec wise PC. But then the thing I am often reminded of is like, but it's going to display at, I don't know if it's 720, but it's like one notch above that. Like it doesn't need to do 1080p. So when we think about PC gaming, we're like, all right, it's got to be 60 frames or more at 1080p, but probably we're going to push to 1440 or 4K if you're an insane person. And we think about PC in those terms, but like when your Switch is displaying 720, even at 30 frames in your hand, it's still good. And I'm like, I'm very, as Colette knows, I'm very anal retentive about that stuff. And when it works on a smaller screen, it is very forgivable. So like the trade-off in horsepower for PC gaming on a handheld might be just fine on a smaller screen at a smaller resolution on the Steam Deck. So I guess I'm saying it's a check in the snob column for PC gamers to say like, no, I will play Red Dead Redemption 2 on a 7-inch screen, and it will be great. You know,
it'll be interesting to see how the device ages in that way, because didn't they say that like that the Steam Deck in its current spec configuration can do like control at 60 frames per second at like medium detail?
Sure.
I think I did read that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember being pretty impressed by like, you know, that it can do current gen PC stuff generally pretty good at medium spec, which even at 720p on a portable device is kind of mind blowing. But especially with how fast GPUs move, you know, like and update, and how quickly things can get outdated. Like I'm really curious as to like as to what the long-term viability of that product will be. Like I know that, you know, if I get one, you know, it's going to do that level of performance at everything that is, you know, that everything you can throw at it from that year back, and that's a huge swath of games. I don't see myself updating or upgrading the device like the way that some people do with like Apple products, like every year or every other year. But for that reason, because, you know, you could never run out of games that way. But I'm really curious as to what their product life cycle is going to be, given how fast PC hardware moves, and
that is exactly what has gotten me thinking. And then I believe Gabe Newell, CEO or president of Valve, said something like, "This is the beginning," and not only alluding to, "Hey, what does the future hold?" but he said something. He was quoted somewhere of saying, "I hope other manufacturers make portable PCs like this," and that is both a very open business model, but also a very self-serving business model, because like if other PC manufacturers make make handheld PCs with Steam OS, that just means I'm going to buy a shit ton more Steam games instead of Switch games, because that's the other thing. It's like, spend $500 on this device because you want to play all these cool, you know, as Aaron said, 1,001 current gen / indie games going all the way back through time in your Steam library. I can buy those for $2 a pop on Steam versus $20 a pop on Nintendo. That's a huge bite out of the Nintendo Switch indie darling marketplace that is incredibly compelling and forward looking, both for Valve and for consumers who probably own a lot of them or can get them very cheaply. But I, you know, we'll see we'll see how it goes in December and all that as pre-orders start coming along. But like, I could see myself, given everything we talked about here, waiting for like the Steam Deck 2, or for HP or Microsoft or Lenovo to make one of these that does exactly the same thing, but has twice the specs, runs Steam OS, does every, is an xCloud Stadia Steam Link capable device as well, where you can stream anything from the cloud, because that's very compelling to me. Is this Steam Deck is it fully ready for all that? Probably mostly, but I might pay $300 in 2 years. You know what I mean? But that's where my head is at.
Yeah,
I think it's absolutely fair.
At the very least, I feel like even if for some reason it was a spectacular failure, which I don't expect it to be, I think it would just be one of those interesting moves where it's like, when I look back at like when Nintendo made the Wii, I'm like, I don't think that the Wiimotes were like, I mean, I'm never going to look back in time and be like, man, what one of my favorite controllers was? The Wiimote. But, despite the fact that none of us were like, oh my God, I love it so much, it did definitely make history in a specific type of way that I think, like, I hate to use this phrase because it's so trite, but like, it's like the thinking outside the box kind of thing. I feel like with the Switch, like Nintendo was like, well, we have consoles and then we have our massively popular, 3DS, and we're just going to mush those things together. And here we are. And like, That's awesome to me. But like, to me, it's like there are some Chinese companies trying to like this guy that I work with, he's terrific. And he did this review of like a little handheld, like laptop style computer.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember?
GPD Linde something.
That's it. And he got it. And he was like, I'm so happy. I love this thing. And I remember thinking, I wonder how long it's going to take before someone, like a more credible, well-known name in America does something like that. And it's like, oh, Steam, holy shit.
It just happened. Yeah.
Like, yeah, to me, it's like, I hope it's a success. I hope it does all the things I dream of. But even if it doesn't, I think it'll probably pave the way for other companies to do that. Mm-hmm. But that said, I have a lot of faith in Valve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm just pleased at this point to see such a the Switch really did reignite, I think, the public's appetite for high fidelity like portable gaming that wasn't on your phone. Like as somebody that, and I have nothing. Mobile gaming is great. I haven't played a game on my phone, and I think basically since the Switch came out, because I haven't really had a need for it, because now everything is portable and it's all awesome. Like the Switch is where I've invested most of my game purchases, if they are, like I play most of my stuff on my Switch. I just love that thing, and it's nice to know that that's not going anywhere anytime soon. I say that knowing and acknowledging that the Steam Deck is definitely not being marketed to the same blue ocean kind of, it's not the same market that Nintendo created with the Wii and then and then capitalized on with the Switch. It's and betrayed with the Wii U. By the way, I love the Wii U. I'm just saying, but I think a lot of people didn't. But like, it's nice to see. It's just nice to see more portable systems out there. I'd be happy the same way that I'd be happy if PlayStation brought back the Vita. I love portable gaming. So that's it.
The Vita, I love that system.
I adore the Vita.
This is it though. You're asking the question, who is this product for? And this is based on my feelings and what we've said here, us, very hyper nerdy focused people who adore this art form and who work in this art form, of course, in Aaron's case, but it's not for people who want a better Switch. It's for people who want their PC games, who love the Switch and wish their PC games were also on the couch. Or to put portable. It another way, like, it's so fascinating. It's just timing, and it's COVID, and it's the manufacturing shortage and whatever, where it's like, hey, remember the Switch Pro? Well, it's not the Switch Pro. It's a Switch with a shinier screen. What do you think? And a lot of people in our circles were like, what the fuck? And then literally a month later, this Valve is like, we got you. We know what you're looking for. And it's that subset of people who are like, I wish I could play Monster Hunter Rise at 60 frames a second. not 30 frames a second, because what an awesome game this is. Well, here's a PC in your hand.
Yeah.
How many of those people exist? I mean, 100,000 people said yes, please. For the pre-orders, or at last count, if the media reporting is to be known.
I mean, or also think about, couples, families, like situations like, ours, where it's like we have one really powerful PC in the house and a bunch of lightweight laptops that we just use for work. So, it's like, oh, you don't have to be like, oh, that person's on the computer, I can't play my game tonight. Or, oh, I really want to play with that person, but we only have one PC. It's like, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Totally.
So I think that's in there too.
And I've heard this elsewhere. It's like, if you don't own a gaming laptop, like if you were like, I should buy a gaming laptop because then I could play my PC games on the go, this is the signal of like, whoa, don't buy that laptop. Wait for this thing, because this is actually the future of portable gaming, not gaming laptops in a way. And I'm sure it won't obliterate that market, but I think it's a strong signal.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I've never enjoyed gaming on a laptop. Not because I have anything against laptops, but all the situations in which I'd want to play PC games away from home, it's not going to be comfortable the same way that a Switch is. If I'm in a hotel room or something, or if I'm if I had an hour commute on on buses or something like that, this is a new level of portability for PC gaming that heretofore has only existed in the realm of the GPD and that kind of stuff. And for that reason, I mean, bringing that to a broader market is definitely, I know there are people hungry for that, but yeah, I have the same question. It's just how many,
How many? Yeah.
But I'm
how
one
many
of them.
to make this worthwhile?
Yeah. Me too.
And again, they don't have to make $200 profit on the machines. That's not the point of this. The point of this is those 15 games on my eShop wish list. Well, I can save $400 on those by buying them on Steam, and that is the play. That's the business play, I think, for Valve here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree.
We shall see. Good times ahead. Well, speaking of video games, it's time to talk about what y'all are playing in a little segment we like to call, What are you playing? Aaron Gustavano.
I was like, are you about to unveil some new name for this? You were like a little segment that we call, and I was like, what are you playing?
What are you playing? Aaron, what are you playing? And again, this can be a hot new release. This can be a game from 1987. It could be you're still grinding out Destiny 2 because you're still in the loop there. What's going on in your life right now?
Well, so I was playing the recently released Skyward Sword HD on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Was playing that. After about 3 hours of that, I stopped playing that and I started playing Wind Waker HD. I know, Skyward Sword is a fine video game. It is not by any stretch a bad video game, but I think the strange realization, because I did not get far in it on the Wii. I don't care at all for motion controls in it, and even with the updated motion controls with the Wii Motion Plus, the granularity of combat where they want you to swing in certain directions and that kind of stuff, all that was cool. But I think by the time Skyward Sword came out, I was getting a little burned out on the Zelda formula. So what's been really interesting about playing it, well, there are two really interesting things about it. The first is it's making me think a lot about how ballsy the jump to Breath of the Wild was. I mean, they had to do something. They had to shake it up. But it's such a departure from what that series was for so long. But basically, my wife and I were playing it, and we're enjoying it and all that, but it's just all we could talk about, because we were playing a traditional Zelda game, all we could talk about was our favorite traditional Zelda game, which was Wind Waker. So we just started playing Wind Waker again, and Wind Waker is still just the most fucking delightful goddamn video game. One of the most delightful video games that Nintendo has ever produced, for all its faults and flaws, and I know there are many. That game doesn't age it looks as good as it did on day one. Link has never looked better. He's never been more adorable. Like I fucking love that game. Wind Waker HD is great. Anyways,
goddamn, here, and the only thing I'll add there is that Wind Waker is fairly linear. Wind Waker is gated. Wind Waker is a Zelda formula.
Oh yeah, it's very much a traditional Zelda. Absolutely,
it's super traditional. But because you can just sail anywhere, it felt amazing and still does. It feels different.
It does.
It's something. It's aesthetic. It's setting. It's tone.
Yeah. There's an illusion of exploration there that's profound. Yeah.
Yes. Wind Waker HD is on Wii U only. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's got to come out on the Switch at some point.
Come on,
and that's what we were. My wife and I were hoping that like there was going to be some big, because it was the 35th anniversary of Zelda this year. Was it? So we were hoping there was going to be like maybe something like the 3D All Stars compilation that Nintendo did, where they would because they ported almost everything else out of Wii U purgatory. I think the only games that are still only playable on Wii U are stuff that requires the hardware, like Game & Wario, which is also great, and you should absolutely play it. But beyond that, it's the Zelda ports. Like those have to be coming at some point, and we've been holding out for that. But then we were playing Skyward Sword, getting frustrated. We're just like, fuck it, let's just hook up the Wii U and play Wind
Waker. That is quite a review. I enjoyed Skyward Sword, and I certainly understand its flaws. But if you're just looking for a Zelda formula Zelda, then it's great. And then I started seeing footage of the HD version and realized through media coverage and fan discussion that like it is not only HD, but it is it runs at 60 frames, and that's really I care about that a lot, and I never realized
it's
back
stunning.
in the day.
Yeah,
it looks really good. I mean, it's still very polygonal and flat, texture wise, but I almost bit the bullet. I almost did it, and then just said, "I'm
looking forward to finishing it at some point," because like I said, that when I first played it, I got to the I didn't get far at all. I got to the Farron Woods with the little guys that aren't Koroks. They look like
Kikwis.
Yes, those fellas. Yeah. And when it made me do a whole like hide and seek thing, I was like, well, fuck this video game. I got better things to do. And it was the first Zelda game that I ever quit. I remember just getting frustrated and being like, nope, this isn't really for me. Like, I feel like I've given it a shot. We made it past that part this time. I made it all the way to the second dungeon, I think. And so I feel like in another 30 or 40 years, I'm going to get, a little bit further. Every re-release, a little bit further.
Yes.
I'm gonna finish that game at some point.
If you go ahead.
I was going to say, I actually didn't play it the first time around, and it's weird. It's interesting hearing you say this, because even though it's like remastered and shiny and fresh, for some reason, I just don't want to play that game. I don't know why.
Yeah. Because like I said,
I love Zelda, but I just it's
right. It's not a bad game. It's not a perfect Zelda game, but it's not a bad game. But there's just something about it. I don't like. It's the same, I'm in the same boat where it's like I adore Zelda. I've been playing Zelda games all my life. That's been the one game that I never played very much of, which is weird. If there was I was going to say if there was a Metroid game that I hadn't played any of. For like my entire life, and it's like however old, a decade old, 2 decades old at this point, I'd be like, well, what am I doing waiting? But there is a Metroid game, that's Other M, and I'm not playing that fucking game any more than I already did. But unlike Other M, Skyward Sword is a perfectly competent Zelda game. It's just I can't put my finger on it. There's
me either.
You know what it might be is that the one thing that I saw somebody make this point. And I think it was maybe the Polygon review. I just saw it today, where somebody pointed out that somebody had pointed out that Skyward Sword, more than any other Zelda game that they could remember, is a game that never that it's extremely linear, and you're solving puzzles always, like all the time. You're never just kind of like moving into it. You don't have a Hyrule Field kind of moment, where you're just out in the middle of nowhere and looking around and like, look at all the all the space and look at all the places I can go. You're in the woods looking for fucking birds, and you're looking for this thing to open that thing. Even when you're not in dungeons, you're having dungeon experiences. And I think that there's something about the pacing of that game feels different to me, that I haven't quite put my finger on, but that's
the disappointment. You know why? Because the entire game feels like it's teeing you up for that Hyrule Field moment, and it never comes. Because it's the fucking sky. Like, the setting of the game is like, fly anywhere, like Wind Waker, fly anywhere. But it teases that and then never delivers. And maybe that's what's going on there. I am not a big puzzle fan. I don't like doing puzzles all the time, but I will say my memory of the game, and actually I played it once. I reviewed it long ago when it first came out, actually. I don't write game reviews. It was one of the few games I've ever reviewed. And I replayed it with my daughter when she was young. And it was her first Zelda game. And it was our first Zelda experience together. It made her, she was very little at the time, but it made her a fan. She loved it. So it has a special place in my heart. And so now I'm remembering, if I can put a check in the you should play this column, the dungeons, especially on the back end, are extraordinary. That's
what I hear. Yep.
They are like, I don't know how to explain it. If you ever see someone solving a Rubik's Cube and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's what some of those later dungeons are. They're so mechanically and meticulously put together, and you feel like a genius when you solve them, is my memory of them. So if that appeals to you or anyone listening, don't go in there expecting Breath of the Wild or Ocarina. Go in, as Aaron said, saying this is a puzzle game and a collecting game and a cutscene game all the way through, and that's what it is. And don't be disappointed when you see that.
Yeah, for sure. Don't be disappointed by what it is.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe that is the reason that I've always bounced off of it, is that I've always in my head lumped it into what I consider to be, a traditional, in the 3D sense of the game, a traditional Zelda. And it just kind of isn't. It's to mirror what you said, Matt, everyone that I've talked to that loves that game talks about the dungeons as the main event. Like, that's why you got to play it. So I just gotta be more patient. You know what's funny? I'm a total hypocrite too, because I love Wind Waker, but that's basically what the sky is. Like, it's the same thing. You're just kind of going to different little hubs. I mean, there's just more hubs to go to, and just as much nothingness on your way there. In the sky. So it's, but Wind Waker has an adorable cartoon Link, and that's where it wins.
Well, but also I feel like, I don't know, like I could be wrong, right? I haven't had played Skyward Sword, so I don't want to like speak fully of it, but like my impression from a person who has not played it is that there's a different tone, not just the cuteness of Link, but there's a different tone about Skyward Sword. And I also can't put into words what I see that being. But it's different. It's not just like, oh, it's another Zelda game. Like, I think they were going, wasn't there some talk around that time that came out that they wanted to have like a more mature version of Link?
I believe so. Well, there was
Does that ring a bell?
Twilight Princess was a direct reaction to. Here's the mind-blowing thing about Wind Waker, by the way. When Wind Waker came out on the GameCube, people fucking hated it. That's it wasn't critically decried, but I mean, if you look at like forums and stuff back in like, people were just complaining left and right about how kiddie it was and how and how goofy it was, which is insane to me. But the sales apparently, especially in North America, weren't what Nintendo had hoped for. So Twilight Princess was a direct reaction to that, and that's where you get the dark tone of it. They went for a more mature. Like, it's interesting that Skyward Sword tonally and in terms of its visuals feels very much like a blend of the two. Like, yes, it's an adult Link. There's higher graphical fidelity. It doesn't, it has very much a defined art style, but it has a lightness to it that that Twilight Princess didn't, because Twilight Princess was too busy being the goth kid in class. So
right. Though Skyward Sword has light and dark. It has darkness in its villains and its origins, the origin story there. So that's really interesting. The one thing I'll say about the exploration of both Wind Waker, and I think the reason, when you sail out on that ocean, yes, it's just an empty ocean on your way to the next island, but there was a map system and there were sectors where like you can just go and explore what's going to be here. And yes, it's gated. You can't get there yet, but you can see a cool volcano and be like, whoa, what's that going to be? You don't know yet. And that exploration is really fun. You can find treasure. You can encounter enemies. Like there's a lot going on in that ocean. And as Aaron said, yes, it's an illusion of open worldiness, but it really worked. And Skyward Sword, by contrast, is a big open sky where nothing happens, and there's two giant holes in the clouds, and you either go down one hole or you go down another hole. And there's actually a third cool area that is actually really cool that you eventually get to in the cloud area. But like, it is not that ocean. It is not sailing on an open ocean where cool stuff happens. It's just not that. And again, if you accept that, it's all good. But if you expect that, you will be disappointed.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm going to be honest. I thought about it. It came out and I was kind of like, well, here it is. This is like, the best version, like I'm gonna play, and like I felt very meh about it. And now that we've had this conversation, I feel even more meh about it.
More meh.
So I don't think I'm gonna play it, because I mean, why? What's the point? Just because it's a Zelda game, it's like, well, if I don't feel like excited by it, no reason to.
I will say that the people that I know that love that game love the shit out of it. There's definitely
no
value
in between.
there. It's just Well, I don't think there's any because like I said, I didn't hate the game. It just made me yearn for Wind Waker. So I just kind of decided to instantaneously redirect and play that. But I do intend to actually go back and play Skyward Sword at some point. I definitely do. I want to underscore this because it's not a bad game. It's just.
It's a rock solid Zelda game, and I think there might be two other. There's three reasons you might want to play it, and also don't $60 like don't we're not twisting your arm here. But one reason, first reason, it is a rock solid Zelda experience. Full stop. Like again, if you're not looking for a Hyrule Field moment, you won't be disappointed. Number two, for history, meaning like as a Zelda fan, you even if you don't love the game to death, I think it would be interesting to you as a Zelda connoisseur to be like, oh, this is a chapter that I never experienced.
Sure.
And it might be worth it just to see it. And number three is there's lore. It's canonically the first Zelda story, and I think the Zelda timeline is a little bullshit. Like it's super all over the place bullshit. And retconny and crazy. So like
I love Zelda. The timeline is bullshit. It
really is. But I do think there is some interesting, because like as we understand Zelda and Ganon and Link, they are eternal characters who come back every generation or every whatever and fight over the power of the Triforce. And that's a cool concept. I like that. Skyward Sword tells an interesting story of like, and this is not, I'm not going to get into spoilers, but like Ganon is the evil dude, but like, how did he become evil, or where does his evilness come from? There's more in the lore beneath that Ganon-ness that is explained in weird ways in Skyward Sword. So for those reasons, as a connoisseur of the lore and ethos of Zelda, like you're missing a piece here. Yeah. And will you love this piece? Maybe not. But maybe it's worth checking out.
It is really interesting.
I could read the Wikipedia page, is what you're saying.
You know what? That's exactly right.
See, I when I gave up on it on the Wii, I went and watched everything on YouTube. Was my so like and it's a solid narrative experience for sure. And another thing to point out, I think I believe there's some significance to the port now because I've read speculation online that and I can't remember the reasons driving this, but there's some speculation that that Breath of the Wild 2, whatever that ends up being titled, is going to flatten the timelines. The three different. This is why it's stupid. The three different concurrent timelines that exist in Zelda right now. That I applaud them to the ends of the earth for doing it. That's a Herculean undertaking, but it's bullshit. Because what Zelda used to be was let's tell another story of these characters in a different way. And I never assumed any kind of continuity until they started.
That's all it has to be.
Yeah. And they kept doing, and like every other game that came out was like, hey, canonically, this is the first one, Link to the Past, they did that with that one. Then it was Ocarina of Time. And then it was, like they just keep, but like none of that has ever mattered to my enjoyment of the game. But it sounds like what they might be doing with the new Breath of the Wild is saying, okay, from this point on, here's an actual coherent timeline, which is cool. And I applaud them for that. I don't think Zelda has ever needed it, frankly.
Yeah, I don't either.
I fully agree. There was imagery in the latest E3 Breath of the Wild 2 trailer that speculative fans are speculating that echoes some of the thematic imagery of Skyward Sword. And then coincidentally, here's an HD remaster of Skyward Sword just in time to get hyped about Breath of the Wild 2. I think it's a stretch, but I see what fans are saying, and that is compelling. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Colette, you are not playing you are not playing Skyward Sword HD. What are you playing?
I'm not playing Skyward Sword, but I am finally, and I'm laughing actually, because as an aside, when Aaron was like, well, I played Skyward Sword, and then I put it down because I just, like really wanted to play like the Zelda I like that has the aesthetic I like. I was like laughing, talking about how I finally started playing a Monster Hunter game. I downloaded the demo for Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin.
Yeah.
And so a friend of mine who is in our Discord messaged me and was like, oh, I got this demo and, I think you might really like it. And I was like, oh, I meant to try that, but I forgot to download it. So I'm going to go get it now. It was like earlier in the evening or whatever. And I don't know what like Rise or like World or any of the other like games in the franchise were like. I was always kind of like, looks interesting, but like, I also feel like I felt like it would be kind of difficult. Like I've had people tell me like, some of those games have kind of like a steep like learning curve. So like, I think that kind of kept me away, even though I found them kind of interesting. But I'm really amused to note that as soon as like you made the game look a little bit more like weeby, like anime, I was like, well, I can play that. And then like I started like reading about it after I started playing it, because I was like, gosh, this is good. I really enjoy this. It's so polished, it's so well done. Like I really like it. It's got like, it's definitely like Pokemon, but like different, right?
Yes.
But like it's Pokemon, but like there's a lot of cute cats, and like that's great for me. And just in general, like I like the aesthetic better, right? But I don't know what any of the other games are like, or if they would fit me well at all. But I am super amused by the fact that like all you had to do is make it weebier for me to be like, okay, I'm here. And also that basically a lot of the reviews are like, this is the Monster Hunter for your kids. And I'm like, that's really funny, because it also happens to be the Monster Hunter for me, a grown-ass woman.
They're like, there's people out there who would love this world, but they're not on board with the like, you need to play 700 hours with the bow axe to get good.
Right. Right. Yeah, it just always sounded like a lot of work. And it's like, am I willing to put in some work in a game I really, really like? Sure. But like usually when I see that game, I'm rabid about it like before like the word go. Like, it's 5 seconds into the trailer and I'm like, oh my God, take my life.
You know it when you see it, and you know when you're ready to invest.
If I'm kind of idly looking at Monster Hunter Rise and being like, well, maybe, to me, that means I'm not going to spend that time. But I don't think Stories is going to necessarily take that kind of time. And I also think that it does enable me to have, like, it's an entry port into a world that I've been interested in, but haven't felt like quite, like it's been the right, like nothing felt quite right. And now that I've gone into it from this, I'm like, well, I like this enough that I would consider trying one of the other ones at some point. But
I'm so fascinated by this because, as we've discussed here and there, the world building in Monster Hunter is not that interesting, in my humble opinion. It is a fantasy medieval dinosaur world that has cool. The art and the aesthetics are spectacular. I think they're very cool, but it's just super like, we're in a village and monsters are here and we got to protect the village. Like, that's every single game. The lore is dumb. It's just dumb. I hope I think because you're playing a JRPG, right, that's a story and its characters and its world, and so that has potential. But Monster Hunter is about clubbing dinosaurs in the face with a hammer. That is what the game is. And so if you love that as much as I love it, then come on in and let's put 300 hours in. But if that's not it for you, then I would venture to guess that Stories or Wings of Ruin or whatever it's called is so different from World and Rise. That's how I perceive it.
It feels like a really, like, if you play a current Pokemon game and you're like, oh my God, this is so polished, but like maybe the Pokemon world like isn't your like perfect click. I think for me, it's just like, this is a JRPG that is, I recognize the structure, I'm going to have turn-based fights and, it's going to be, instead of elements that, oh my God, you need to attack the fire dragon with the ice sword. Instead of that, it's, kind of like a rock, paper, scissors functionality. But other than that, like, it's basically the same kind of thing. But, like for me, right, it's like, well, yeah, this is kind of like this, I guess I would call it kind of like a tribal village that you start in. But it is like a setting that I personally haven't played before. And I think maybe that makes it fresh. I am curious, though, if like in 5 or 6 hours, when I've done nothing but like go on fetch quests and collect eggs and hatch my eggs, if I'm going to be like, I'm bored now. And I might be, but like right this second, I'm like, this is cool. Oh my God, look at the cat. The cats are cute.
The one thing, I'm not in the market for a JRPG right now, although I'm going to contradict myself in a moment, but the one thing that broke out of the like, this is a Pokemon monster catching art JRPG thing was there is some sort of breeding system or genetic system where you can grow your own monsters with unique traits, and that kind of stuff is always like, tell me more. Like, I'm interested in that kind of I
actually didn't know that, but I since I have the demo, I was told by the friend that was like, yeah, the demo is like a good meaty like 4 hours, like you can really get into it, which I think is kind of a smart play with like a demo for an RPG, because I feel like if you get someone in far enough and then you're like, oh, it's transferable, if you buy the game, your odds are higher than just giving like a taste, like JRPG. So
much of that on the Switch these days, and it's really nice to see that.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate that. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm probably like 2 hours in, but like the likelihood of me purchasing it at the end of the demo so I can continue, I'd say, is probably pretty high at the moment. Nice. And I haven't played like a nice polished JRPG in a minute. Like, I was really trying to think about the last one, and I think it was maybe Persona 5. And I mean, like, that, not Royal, Persona 5. And I'm like, that has been a while, like really a while. So I'm enjoying that experience for sure. But yeah, so I'll have to report back next week and tell you if I'm tired of hatching eggs or not.
Aaron, are you a Monster Hunter fan? Does that scratch any itches for you?
It's weird because like I've had so many friends who are big into Monster Hunter, because I'm a big Dark Souls dork, and I've had so many people tell me like, oh, well, if you love Dark Souls, you're gonna love this game. I've never been able to bridge that I've never been able to make that connection myself. Whenever I've tried like 3 of them, and I didn't bounce off of them. I didn't dislike them. I just I think to harken back what you guys were saying to a minute ago, I have only so much room for obsessive for like the games that I'm obsessed about.
Yes,
and I don't think I have room in my in my repertoire of obsessions for another game that requires quite as much as from the player as Monster Hunter does, which is considerable. Like, it's a lot of investment, but but I know plenty of people who just adore the shit out of that game. I wish I could get into it.
I don't see the bridge there. I mean, in Dark Souls, you fight big monster bosses, sure, but correct me if I'm mistaken. Dark Souls is about progression. You get to a boss and you have to keep fighting that boss until you perfect the fight and then conquer and then move forward.
Yeah, where the connection was illustrated for me was that sense of mastery over a build that you get over time, like of actually like getting good at playing. The getting good at playing the game moment to moment kind of thing. I mean, that is part of it, but the reason I love Monster Hunter is the grind, meaning even if I kind of suck, I can keep doing quests and hunts over and over again to get better armor, to then make the fights that I suck at manageable, and then I can progress that way. And there's something about that I really love. And I bounced off Dark Souls real hard because I do not like
suffering.
Dark Souls is not that game.
It's not that game. You have to get good at the fight on your own skill to progress. Whereas a loot based game, almost like a Warframe or a Destiny or a Monster Hunter, is like, I can just do missions again and again to get better stuff, to get better, to make numbers go up, and that's different from Dark Souls.
Maybe that's why I bounced off of it, because I just went in completely misinformed. Like that I've had that recommendation in that verbiage, like sort of associated with that game for the longest time, and I've never been able to see it, and maybe that's because it's not there.
When you said it, I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
That would explain a lot.
Monster Hunter is, to me, feels more like a live service looter, not a shooter, but a loot grind game. But again, with no story, there's no like epic arc of a story. The story is literally like, a new monster appeared, help us, and that's it. Go smack it with a hammer. Like, that's the whole game, and it's great if you like that sort of thing. Yes. So Colette, please report back, because I just don't have enough affinity for the Monster Hunter world to care about the characters and story. But but reviews are indicating, and fan reception is indicating, that this really is delightful and fun. And
I mean, so far it has been, like the feeling, and the reason I mentioned Pokemon, other than the collecting, creatures aspect, is that when you play a Pokemon game, I would say this goes for a lot of Nintendo titles, especially this particular era. It just feels like it's really shining out to me. But like, there's just a sense of like, wow, this is so incredibly polished. It's so beautiful. The dialogue is so well done, even if it's simple. Like, all of the different pieces just shine. And so for me, it was like the excitement of being like, oh my God, I'm having that Nintendo experience, but in a franchise I've never been able to get into before. And I'm just really enjoying every minute of it. So that's where I'm at really right now. Yeah, it is.
That's really great. Nice to hear. It's great. It's great. It's a good polished modern JRPG is a warm blanket.
It really is. Yeah. That's exactly how I feel about it. So I might try to cram in a little more time when the podcast is over.
Okay, nice. Well, all right. I won't take up too much more of your time because we've been here quite a while. But for a long time, I said, you know what? Everyone says that this is a great game and everyone should play it and check it out. And then in the recent Steam Summer Sale, Summer Game Fest, whatever, Titanfall 2 was on sale for like $5.
Yes.
And I bought it, and I was busy doing other things, obsessing over other things, mostly Deep Rock Galactic, which I have spoken about on this show a lot. I think last time we chatted, Colette, I was like, I'm going to check out the end game and see if I want to put another 100 hours into it. And the answer is Yes, I do. I would like to create, find more things and turn those things into more things so I can get more things and then find more things in these procedurally generated mines. So Deep Rock Galactic is just a chef's kiss masterpiece of a game. And there is, an end game in it these days. There hasn't always been as the game developed, but it's really, really fun. But I have nudged that aside to say, you know what? I want to play something that's like a big blockbuster kick-ass thing. And I keep, with all the talk of Apex Legends, and I'm really not a shooter guy. I don't play a ton of shooters, though I did put in my time with Warframe. I don't play Call of Duty and those types of games, but like everyone's like, epic sci-fi wall running Titanfall, like you got to play this. And I played it, and I'm happy to report I just smashed through the single player campaign in 3 nights, and it was great. My appreciation of it is it really is a fun shooter. You're grabbing all sorts of different weapons at different times and just kind of like, pick up this gun. What does this gun do? I don't know. Pum pum. And you're shooting lightning bolts. It's awesome. It's really fun to just kill stuff. Colette, to your point, you made often just got to kill. And this is a good killing game. Amazing set pieces and level designs. Like you find yourself in environments that are just like really creative and well done and well executed and beautiful. And the game runs really well. And it was really fun. And I really liked the setting, and I really liked the mech suit, the robot, which you can go into and become like a mech warrior, basically. But you can also then hop out of the suit and just go on foot. And the campaign kind of forces you to do both of those things. But the robot, the suit, is a character, and I found him to be very compelling. And it made me think of, this is so freaking random, and I don't know if either of you will know this, but do you know the game Blaster Master?
Yes.
I do.
Okay. NES game. I think they've made sequels since then. But
there's been a remake, yeah.
There's a remake, right?
Blaster Master 0, and then there are sequels to that. So yeah.
It made, I don't think it's an extraordinary game, but it made an indelible imprint on me. I probably rented it multiple times from Blockbuster, as we have discussed repeatedly on this show. And there's something about it where you're a kid, you fall down a well, and you go to this like Metroid style underworld, and you get a car. You get like a tank car, basically, that can shoot things. And the mechanic of the game that's interesting is you get in the car and you are powerful because you have a giant cannon on your car, and you can blast through obstacles and enemies, and you can go fast. But then the game forces you to get out of the car to crawl through very tight spaces or reach areas on foot that you can't normally reach. And you are extremely vulnerable, but you have to be on foot to reach important areas. And that switch between I'm in a powerful robot tank car versus I'm helpless, I gotta be careful. I suddenly had a memory of that game playing Titanfall 2, and I was like, wow, I really like the difference between being on foot and vulnerable and being in this giant tank warrior. My criticism of the game, which is minimal, is it's like the story is super like military bro space police, like we are the good guys and we are fighting bad guys who are bad for some reason, and I really did not understand who was whom. Like, why are the good guys good and why are the bad guys bad? And literally the main protagonist that you play is a white guy named Jake Cooper, which is like the whitest military broiest. The game was made in 2016, and it's like you could literally see, you could feel the concept of this being like, well, it's got to be Jake Cooper, this American military bro dude. So that felt very dated to me for some reason. And then it made me wonder, like, okay, well, this is the sequel to an original game that I did not play and have no intention of playing. was there a backstory and lore that I missed out on? Because like, talking to the freaking narrative writer designer of a Halo game, like Halo is about an epic religious war over an existential threat to the universe. And this game was like, some bad guys have a big weapon and don't let them get that weapon. Really fun. But like, I didn't care about the story at all. So highly recommend it. Oh, and also the multiplayer servers are currently under severe DDoS attack and are offline. So like, oof. I just uninstalled the game because I'm like, I literally can't play multiplayer. So okay, back to Deep Rock, I guess. But so, Aaron, you seem to be enthusiastic and excited when I mentioned this game.
I fucking love Titanfall 2.
Tell me why you do, and what's your take on the narrative stuff there? I'm curious.
So the reason I love Titanfall 2 is I've always played shooters. My favorite shooters are the ones like I was a Quake kid, right? So like I like games where you move insanely fast and it's extremely kinetic and it's very like acrobatic. Titanfall 2 was the sequel to Mirror's Edge that I didn't know I wanted.
Interesting. Okay.
Because like it's so like it's so fast. It moves so fluidly. You feel so good. I love games where action games especially. I love games where the better you're playing, the cooler you look. Like when you can like really like when somebody's sitting next to you, if you really know, like Vanquish is a game like this, right? Where if you can play it well, the people sitting next to you are like, holy shit, dude, what is that? Like, you're just like, yeah, I'm so, and Titanfall just like Titanfall 2, the campaign in Titanfall, like I played the first Titanfall and I enjoyed it. I played the multiplayer. I enjoyed that too. But Titanfall didn't live rent free in my head until the Titanfall 2 campaign. And the story, I thought the story was a representative of its era. I make it a general. I don't nitpick stuff. I think it was fine for what it was. I really liked BT, the big robot guy.
BT, extraordinarily with so likable and so engaging. But then also a couple of little narrative missteps of like, I don't understand emotions because I'm a robot. Like, okay, Hal, we get it. We that trope has been done 1,000 times. Like, I wish they could have sidestepped that and just been like, BT's really awesome. He's a cool robot. He's a sympathetic robot, and that's all we need.
It's what this may be a little too telling for me, but like honestly, like the plots, I don't really care about plots anymore because, and actually there's research to back this up. Players don't remember plots; they remember characters.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right.
And that's what you come away with is when it's the characters that stick in your head. And actually, I love the characters of Titanfall 2, so it's that's what I remember most fondly about it.
Yep. It absolutely did that job, and very memorable indeed. Yeah. Briefly, because you're talking about the acrobatic and the flow of an action game like that, are you familiar? Have you ever dabbled in Warframe?
I have. Yeah. I really liked what I played of it. I love the way that game looks because nothing looks like that game. I love how singular it appears, just even for a surface level player like me. But I played it early before, because I think I played it in like 2014 or 2015, like shortly after it debuted. And before it had really, and one of the problems that I have is when a game is operating for that long and there's so much been added to it, like I always feel overwhelmed coming to a game with that much content in it. And I just have never gotten back to, like, I have the same problem with like EVE Online, where it's like so much has changed since I played EVE Online that I'm just like, I don't even know where to start. How do I get back into this? Yeah. But it definitely, it has that same kind of quality to it. The fluidity of play is remarkable.
Yeah, there's a flow to it where if you the levels are like procedurally generated, like each mission is a tile set that is different every time, but you know your way around because the door's here and the open area is here. But if you get in the rhythm of it, there's a I forget what they call it. It's like a spin jump or a dash or something. You can basically you can jump very high or you can jump very far. And there's an acrobatic like pacing to it where you can just like zoop, 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 like dash through levels very quickly. And if you get interrupted by miscalculating, it's like, shit, but if you calculate it just right, it is majestic in the way that Titanfall felt. And also you mentioned Mirror's Edge, parkour-ish in that way, and I always enjoyed that. In addition to the grind and the lore and the numbers going up, as it were. But and then briefly, I won't talk much about this because I have only just started. But thanks to Colette's recommendation, there was an eShop sale a while back, and we talked about grabbing a bunch of different things that were on our lists, and Final Fantasy 12.
Nice.
Zodiac Age.
Yes! The best one! The best one! Yes!
This is one of many reasons why I've loved Aaron for this long, but that was one of them.
Listen, I'm not going to talk about it much. I'm going to briefly say, listeners will know, Colette knows, that I never owned a PlayStation console, so as a Final Fantasy fan, there is a massive gap in my knowledge, in my repertoire here. And so Colette and I have talked extensively of like, should I get X? Should I get 13? Like, which one is best for me? And through discussion, we settled on 12. And I am enjoying the cozy JRPG blanket in the palm of my hands. Yay! On the Switch. That 12 is a very early. I'm hitting rats with a dagger, basically, is all I've done so far. However, this is PS2 era? PS3?
Yes.
I don't remember.
Originally on the PS2.
I think it's 2, right?
PS2.
Yep.
I don't know if they've re-upped the cinematics or and the music, but like loving the music, loving the cinematics, loving the setting and the aesthetics of the world.
Ivalice.
And
the best thing that
Ivalice,
Square has ever made is Ivalice.
Ivalice.
Yeah.
I'm super into it. Very early. I'm already down for Ivalice, and I'm looking forward to the cast of characters, because right now it's just Vaughn, who is just kind of like he's a cool, sneaky punk little kid running around the sewers or whatever, and that's cool. But like, I hope and expect for a big cast of crazy characters that will go on whatever this adventure is going to be.
You'll get them.
I'm excited. So that's all I can say.
You're not even at the part yet. It sounds like you haven't reached the point yet where it's given you reign over the gambit system. Is that correct? Like,
I don't even know what it is. There's a menu that's like turn gambits on, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, so if you're enjoying like the fundamental like the atomic experience of Final Fantasy 12, which is exactly what you've experienced so far, right? It's a a real time spin on the active time battle stuff. Like, if you're enjoying that, you're gonna love what's gonna come, because it's like, I think that's what a lot of people. I don't know. 12 is another one of those, like, I think is one of the most deeply misunderstood games by a majority of gamers, because it's like the whole like, oh, it just plays itself. It's like, well, no, you are constructing AI that will do your bidding and will that you can just tromp through an entire area with and not have to worry about. But like, even not reaching that, like, if you're feeling that warm JRPG blanket feeling just from the very, very most basic foundations of the game, you're gonna like it a lot.
But I get why people see that, because it's a third person move around. It feels like it should be an action RPG, and then you arrive at an enemy and you're like, menu, click.
Yep.
And then it auto battles. And it's like, that is confusing, because most Final Fantasies and other turn-based game are exactly that. You just can't move your character. They're on one side of a screen and you're on the other. So it's the same formula. It's just weird because you're moving a character in 3D space in relation to an enemy who's also moving, and it's mashing two combat systems together. So I was equally thrown off by that, but I'm trusting the franchise to deliver on like, oh no, there's going to be way more going on in this combat system soon enough, and I know enough about these games to know that. I'll say this, and we've talked about it here. I fucking hated Xenoblade Chronicles 2 because I found a lot of the game to be very obtuse and needlessly stupid, and I found the combat system. Everyone, all the fans are like, once you get like 35 hours into the combat system, then it starts to get good. And I'm like, I don't think so. I have faith in Final Fantasy to not burn me that way, but I'm seeing similarities already, and I'm like, okay, this is going to turn into something.
Yeah, I will say that it doesn't take. That's the one that I love JRPGs. I've always loved JRPGs. That's the thing that I bounce off of most on JRPGs now is like if you have a really robust battle system, but it's going to take me 30 hours to get there, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Final Fantasy 13, I've replayed every Final Fantasy game except 13. Well, and I haven't replayed 15 yet because 13 it just takes forever. Like I love the battle system in 13. It takes 30 hours before it gives you full reign over that battle system. 12 is a little bit better about it. 12, you'll have all and especially the version that you're playing. I'm especially appreciative of the fact that you're getting to experience 12 as the Zodiac Age version because the quality of life improvements that they made in the international version that it was based on and above and beyond that for this release are considerable and make a really big difference. One of the main ones is when you do get access to the Gambit system, you won't have to get to the end of the game to get to have access to all of the different like verbs and circumstances that you can kind of configure a character around. Like, when this variable is at this level, then do this thing. You will have access to that from the beginning of. As soon as you have access to the Gambit system, you have access to the whole thing, and that completely changes the nature of the game. So
you've already, I mean, like I'm in it, but you are getting me very excited that it sounds like a tactical strategic system that you're constructing to confront an enemy situation. Like if then that, if this happens, did you do this? Like that is, that really appeals to me. So I'm excited.
It's Dragon Age 2, I think, had a similar system. So if you liked configuring AI characters in Dragon Age 2, you'll love Final Fantasy 12.
I never got to 2. I won.
Well, if you like the idea of configuring AI characters, you're going to love this game.
I'm down. And I will, and I know that the quality of life improvements you're talking about are part of the game itself, but also this Switch version, if you press L1, is fast forward mode. So like, I don't want to walk across this whole desert. That's going to take me 5 minutes. I can do it in 2. Zip, 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 zip. And you just fast. And it's actually really well done because it's not like an emulator where you can just fast forward the actual game itself. It just fast forwards the gameplay. But then if you hit a cutscene or you hit...
The music's intact. And
the music's intact. It's really well done. And I really appreciate that because I don't know that I have 50 hours to play a PS2 game, but I certainly have 35 hours or whatever, you know what I mean? And that's going to be great.
Well, I'm excited for you, man.
Thank you very much. You have gotten me excited. Yeah. I will report back. But any final thoughts, any final games, any final shout outs? Aaron, where can listeners check out your work? Obviously the games you've worked on, but maybe your socials, how can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Aaron Linde. I don't do too much on there except complain about bullshit. So I don't really do any blogging anymore or streaming. So really, that's pretty much it. If you invest in a time machine, you can go back and play Battleborn. Otherwise, if you stay tuned for Halo Infinite coming this fall. It's gonna be great.
Stay tuned. Yeah. Very exciting.
Holiday, excuse me. That's the date. Holiday.
Colette, final thoughts?
I'm hungry. That's it.
Great. Good. That's it.
I didn't eat dinner before the podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to eat so much food. I know.
Go do that.
I'm the worst.
Aaron, thank you again for joining us. This has been delightful.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
And thank you to you, the listener, for entering the chat with us. Our theme music is by Azure Flux. Our logo is illustrated by Just Call Me Katarina. And as usual, please tell us what games you are playing. Send us an email, haveenteredthechat@gmail.com. And there's a Discord link to Colette. Your Discord server is in the show notes here. If you like what you're hearing, come on in. We're just talking about games and memes and pets and stuff, horror games, right?
But we do have a dedicated channel in there that is just for the podcast. So
yes.
But you're welcome to all of them, of course.
Come on in. We would like to see you there. And until next time, we will chat with you next week.